In matters of the heart and in matters of survival, appearances could be everything. And on the island of St. Emmeline, Lady Evelina Sinclair and Captain Rhys Calder were about to become masters of deception, or fall spectacularly trying.
The Sinclair drawing room was awash with morning light and scandal. Eva stood stiffly at her father's side as Rhys Calder lounged against the mantel, exuding a rakish charm so potent the maids giggled behind their aprons. Her father's eyes narrowed. "Captain Calder," he said through gritted teeth. "A privateer." "A very successful one," Rhys said easily, offering a slow, shark-like smile. "And now, future son-in-law." Eva fought the urge to grind her teeth. They had agreed. Rhys would play the role to perfection, and she would endure it. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. But the engagement is so sudden," she whispered. Eva forced a brittle smile. "Love moves quickly," she said, hating how hollow the words sounded. Across the room, Rhys caught her eye and winked. She vowed to murder him at the earliest opportunity. The governor's ball glittered with candlelight and jewels. Every powerful family on St. Emmeline had come to see the spectacle. Lady Sinclair, throwing herself at a pirate. Eva swept down the marble stairs in a sea-green gown, her heart pounding traitorously hard. Rhys waited at the foot of the stairs, looking dangerous and devastating. He wore a black formal coat over a crisp white shirt, his hair tamed only slightly. The cut of his clothes whispered of wealth, of command. When he offered his hand, Eva hesitated a fraction too long. His voice was a low murmur, only she could hear. "Smile for the wolves, sweetheart." She plastered on a dazzling smile and took his arm. Around them, whispers buzzed like wasps. "A pirate? An engagement? Scandalous!" Rhys leaned down, lips brushing the shell of her ear. "Enjoying yourself?" Eva ground out, "I hope you step on my toes." He laughed, a sound so rich and warm it almost made her forget herself. Almost. The waltz began. Rhys led her onto the floor with infuriating ease, moving with the fluid grace of a born predator. Eva stumbled once, only to find a strong arm steadying her. "Relax, little siren," he said under his breath. "You're supposed to make it look like you want me." She glared up at him. "I'm considering stabbing you with my hairpin." His teeth flashed in a wicked grin. "That's my girl!" As they spun across the floor, Eva realized something unsettling. He moved with her, not against her. Guiding, protecting, watching. Not just an act, not just a game. And her body, traitorous and foolish, recognized it, the way it fit against his, the way it wanted to trust him. "Dangerous," whispered the voice in her mind. So very dangerous. After the dance, they drifted to the terrace, the heavy scent of jasmine filling the humid night. Rhys leaned against the balustrade, watching the stars. "You dance well," he said casually. "I survive well," she corrected. He chuckled. "Same thing in our line of work." Eva hesitated. "You don't seem like a pirate," she said finally. Rhys's smile was slow, sardonic. "And you, little siren, don't seem like a helpless damsel." They stood in silence, the distance between them crackling with things unsaid. At last, Rhys straightened, his face hardening. "Be careful," he said, voice low. "There are worse men than me watching you tonight." Eva shivered, despite the heat. "Who?" she asked. Rhys shook his head. "Not yet." And just like that, the moment between them shattered, replaced by cold strategy once more. Inside, across the ballroom, a pair of sharp eyes watched them from behind a gold-rimmed mask. Lord Weatherby. His mouth twisted into a sneer as he watched Eva laugh at something the pirate whispered in her ear. She was slipping from his grasp, and he would not allow it. Not for love, not for pride, for power. And if the pretty little Sinclair girl thought a pirate could protect her, well, she had much to learn about the price of disobedience.
Trust was a dangerous currency between a lady and a rogue. And sometimes the things left unsaid spoke loudest of all.
The moon hung heavy over the Sinclair gardens, spilling silver across the stone terrace. Ava crept through the shadowed halls, the small knife tucked nervously into her palm. Rhys's message had been maddeningly brief. "Meet me where the roses bleed." She found him leaning casually against the old stone wall near the blood-red rose bushes, a blade glinting in his hand. "Took you long enough," he murmured. "I had to avoid half the household," she said, breathless. Rhys tossed a second knife toward her. She barely caught it, stumbling. He smirked. "Lesson 1. Never show weakness, even to me." Her chin lifted. "Especially to you." That earned a low laugh. He stepped closer until the scent of salt and leather and something purely male wrapped around her. "Hold it like this," he said, reaching around her, his arms enclosing hers. His hands closed over her fingers, adjusting her grip with infuriating gentleness. Ava could feel the heat of him everywhere, in the brush of his chest against her back, the steady pulse of his breath by her ear. "You'll need to move faster if you want to survive," he said, voice roughened. "I intend to do more than survive," she whispered. Their eyes met, too close, too intense. For one reckless heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he stepped back, leaving her cold and furious at herself for wanting him to stay. After an hour of clumsy thrusts and mocking corrections, Ava threw the knife down in frustration. "I'm not a soldier," she snapped. "No," Rhys said slowly, picking up the blade. "You're not. You're something rarer." He tossed the knife back to her with casual skill. "You're brave enough to know you're afraid. Most fools never get that far." Eva stared at him, thrown off balance. "You speak like you know something of fear," she said quietly. For a moment, shadows flickered in his gaze. "I do," he said, "and I know it's not weakness." The air between them shifted, something deeper, more dangerous than the blade she held. "I don't trust you," she said, voice shaking slightly. Rhys smiled, not the mocking grin he wore in company, but something quieter. Almost proud. "Good," he said. "You'll live longer." He turned away first, always in control, always retreating just before the line was crossed. And Eva, heart-pounding traitorously, wasn't sure whether she hated him for it, or hated herself more for wanting him to cross it. Later that night, in the cramped study where they planned their next move, Eva found herself trapped. Rhys leaned over her shoulder, pointing at a map spread across the desk. "You'll be here," he said, his breath warm against her temple. "At the governor's banquet." "And you?" she managed, willing her hand not to tremble. "I'll be where trouble is," he said, voice full of dark amusement. "Which, these days, seems to be wherever you are." She twisted to glare at him, only to find herself impossibly close to his mouth, to the stubble-shadowed jaw she tried not to admire. Rhys didn't move, neither did she. For one breathless, incendiary moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, thinner than a hair, heavy as a storm. Then, very deliberately, Rhys leaned back. "If you keep looking at me like that, sweetheart," he drawled, "I might forget I'm supposed to behave like a gentleman." "You?" she said, recovering enough to snort. "A gentleman?" He grinned wickedly. "Only when absolutely necessary." At the door, before she could slip away into the night, Rhys caught her wrist. "Eva," he said, voice low and serious. She turned, startled by the use of her name, without title or teasing. "If anything happens at the banquet," he said, thumb brushing lightly over the inside of her wrist, where her pulse hammered, "you run. You don't wait for me." But, she began. No heroics, he said fiercely. Promise me. For once she heard the crack beneath the iron in his voice. The fear, the care. She nodded slowly. I promise. Rhys's fingers tightened once, briefly. Then he let her go. As Eva slipped away into the shadows, her heart ached with something far more dangerous than fear. Hope.
Some storms come with thunder and lightning. Others are quieter, made of glances, whispers, and hearts too proud to admit they are already sinking.
The governor's house gleamed under lantern light, its wide balconies and marble floors filled with the island's elite. Eva stood at Rhys's side, her hand tucked into the crook of his arm. Every head turned as they entered, whispers trailing in their wake. They're staring, she muttered under her breath. Rhys bent low, his lips brushing her ear, sending a shiver down her spine. Let them, he said, dark amusement warming his tone. They've never seen a man foolish enough to court a hurricane. Eva masked a smile. God help her, she liked his wickedness far too much. As they moved through the crowd, Eva noticed the tightness in Rhys's shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped scanning. He was a predator in fine clothing, every inch of him dangerous. And she was willingly tethered to him. Halfway through the evening, they encountered Weatherby, the cruel plantation owner Eva had been promised to. Weatherby was flushed with drink, his sneer unmistakable as he bowed low over Eva's gloved hand. My dear Lady Evelina, he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I hear you've thrown your lot in with pirates now. How charming. Rhys's grip on her hand tightened almost imperceptibly. Eva smiled sweetly. Better a pirate than a scoundrel, don't you think? Weatherby's eyes narrowed. A pirate can be hanged, my lady. A scoundrel merely prospers. The unspoken threat hung heavy. Before Eva could answer, Rhys stepped forward, his expression polite, but his voice hard as iron. Careful, Weatherby, he said softly. The tides have a habit of turning when you least expect it. It was a challenge, pure and simple, and the tension in the room tightened like a noose. Weatherby's smile slipped. Eva's heart pounded, a reckless, wild rhythm. For the first time, she realized Rhys would not let her fight her battles alone. Later, after too many forced smiles and whispered threats, Eva found a moment to slip outside. She leaned against the cool stone balcony rail, breathing in the scent of the sea, trying to steady herself. She sensed him before she heard him, the subtle shift of air, the quiet surety of his footsteps. You shouldn't be alone, Rhys said, his voice softer now, lacking its usual mockery. I needed air, she said. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him along her spine. You handled Weatherby well, he murmured. I wanted to stab him with my butter knife, she said dryly. Rhys huffed a laugh, low and dangerous. If you had, he said, I'd have married you on the spot. Eva turned, startled, and found herself once again too close. His hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed a curl from her cheek. The touch was feather-light, almost reverent. For a moment, the world narrowed to his hand against her skin, his dark eyes locked with hers. You're not what I expected, he said, voice rough. Neither are you, she whispered. Something flared between them, a spark that could set the whole cursed island alight if either dared to move. But Rhys stepped back first, jaw tight. You make me reckless, he muttered. And then, as quickly as he had come, he was gone, leaving Eva breathless and aching and utterly furious at herself for wishing he'd stayed. As the banquet ended, a messenger shoved a sealed letter into Rhys's hand. He read it once, then again, slower. His face darkened. Without a word, he caught Eva's hand and pulled her into a shadowed alcove. What is it? She asked, alarmed by the grimness on his face. Trouble, he said. Bigger than Weatherby. Bigger than your father's cargo. He pressed the letter into her hands. Inside, scrawled in a messy, hurried hand. They know. Watch the girl. She's in danger. Eva's fingers tightened on the parchment. Rhys leaned down, his forehead briefly touching hers in a moment of unguarded emotion. I won't let anything happen to you, he said roughly. Then, before she could say a word, he pulled away, the wall slamming back up between them, and disappeared into the night, cloak billowing behind him like a dark, wild promise.
When masks slip and truths are laid bare, there is no shelter left, only the raw, staggering question of who will stand and who will turn away.
The morning after the banquet dawned gray and heavy with the scent of rain. Eva paced the length of her father's study, the warning letter clutched in her fist. Her mind raced. Who had sent it? What did they know? Rhys stood near the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. He had barely spoken since dragging her back to the Sinclair estate in the dead of night. You're not telling me everything, she accused finally. He didn't deny it. Instead, he turned, the weight of his gaze pinning her. Because if you knew everything, he said, voice low, you wouldn't trust me. Her heart thudded painfully. I already don't, she whispered. Something like hurt flickered across his face, gone in an instant. Good, he said. Then you might survive this. Before she could ask more, the butler appeared, pale and nervous. Sir, my lady, you're summoned to the governor's court. Immediately. Rhys's mouth tightened into a grim line. It's started, he muttered. The courtroom buzzed like a nest of hornets. Weatherby stood smirking at the governor's side, papers in his hand, damning evidence of Rhys's privateering past, twisted to sound like piracy. And here, Weatherby declared, slapping down a parchment, the testimony of sailors who claim Captain Rhys Calder preyed on merchant vessels, including those belonging to our esteemed Lady Evelina's own family. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Eva's father refused to meet her eyes. Eva, sitting rigid and white-faced at Rhys's side, felt every stare like a blade between her ribs. The governor, a pompous man with thinning hair, turned to Eva. Lady Evelina, he said, oily smooth, surely you were unaware of your betrothed's unsavory activities? All eyes locked on her, waiting, expecting her to recoil, expecting her to save herself. Rhys didn't look at her. He stared straight ahead, jaw clenched so tightly she thought it might shatter. He wouldn't beg, wouldn't even ask, because he would rather lose everything than see her dragged down with him. Her heart cracked. Slowly, deliberately, Eva rose to her feet. I was perfectly aware, she said, her voice clear as a bell. A shocked murmur surged through the hall. And, she added, stepping closer to Rhys, I am proud to stand by him. Gasps again. Louder now, scandalized. Weatherby spluttered. The governor gaped. Rhys turned finally, his expression thunderstruck. Eva met his gaze, lifting her chin. I chose him, she said to the entire room. And I choose him still. Later, in the chaos of the courtyard outside, Rhys caught her arm and spun her to face him. Are you mad? He hissed. Possibly, she said breathlessly. You've ruined your reputation, he growled. Thrown your lot in with a man who... Who what? She challenged. Who risks his life for people who can't fight for themselves? Who protected me when no one else would? Rhys stared at her, wild and furious and aching. You don't understand what you're doing, he said, voice low and ragged. You're tying yourself to a man with no name, no fortune, no future. Then we'll make our own, she said simply. Rhys grabbed her face between his hands, not gently, and kissed her. It was not a tender kiss. It was savage, desperate, fierce, the clash of two storms meeting in the dark. Eva melted against him, hands tangling in his shirt, heart pounding like cannon fire. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Rhys pressed his forehead to hers. "You are the most dangerous woman I've ever known," he said hoarsely. "And you," she whispered back, "are the only man brave enough to be mine." Before they could catch another breath, the governor himself approached, looking far less smug than before. "Captain Calder," he said stiffly, "you have powerful friends who petitioned on your behalf this morning. Under certain conditions, you are pardoned." Rhys arched a brow. "Conditions? You will leave the Caribbean within the month," the governor said, "and you will cease all privateering." Rhys smiled, slow and sharp. "Done." Eva squeezed his hand. They had won, but at a cost. As they walked away from the governor's court, together, scandal blazing behind them, Eva knew the hardest battles were yet to come. But she also knew one thing with blinding certainty. They would face them side by side.
Some treasures are not made of gold or jewels. Some are made of promises whispered in the dark, of hands clasped through storms, of hearts finally brave enough to love without fear.
The docks were bathed in the soft gold of the setting sun. Eva stood at the end of the pier, the hem of her traveling cloak snapping in the sea breeze. Behind her, the city bustled, a world she no longer belonged to. Ahead of her, Rhys's ship, Savage Wind, bobbed on the gentle tide, its sails ready to catch the wind toward freedom. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. Rhys was there, dressed simply in a linen shirt and worn breeches, no longer hiding who he was. He held out his hand. "No fancy dresses," he said, teasing gently. "No more corsets," she agreed, smiling. "No rules," he said. Eva took his hand, her heart soaring. "No regrets," she whispered back. Without a backward glance, they boarded the ship, leaving behind everything they had known. That night, as stars spilled like scattered diamonds across the sky, Eva found Rhys standing at the wheel. He stared out over the dark water, his features illuminated by the moonlight, more beautiful and more haunted than ever. Quietly, she stepped to his side. "You're brooding," she teased. He didn't smile. "I don't deserve you," he said roughly. Eva's heart clenched. "You're wrong," she said softly. "You're the only thing I ever chose for myself." He turned then, slowly, as if afraid she might vanish. "You could have had comfort," he said. "Position, wealth." "I chose you," she said fiercely. "You are my home." Emotion flickered across his face, raw, vulnerable, devastating. He reached for her, cupping her face in both hands. "I love you, Eva Sinclair," he said, voice breaking. It was not a pretty declaration. It was rough, wrecked, real, the way he did everything. "And I," she whispered, "have loved you since you first threatened to throw me overboard." A laugh broke from him, rough and incredulous. And then he kissed her, not with desperation this time, but with wonder, with gratitude, with the aching sweetness of a man who had found the impossible. A woman who loved him exactly as he was. Days later, they sailed under open skies, the islands fading behind them. Eva stood at the prow, the wind tugging at her hair, the sea sparkling before her, like a road paved in light. Rhys came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Where to, my lady?" he asked, voice lazy with happiness. "Everywhere," she said, laughing. He squeezed her tighter. "I like the sound of that." Together, they sailed into the unknown. Partners, lovers, equals. No masks, no chains. Only freedom, only each other. And whatever adventures awaited just beyond the horizon,